On today's show, we finally have a decently moderately sized signing on our hands to look at and react to, and what it says about the Padres with Yusei Kikuchi agreeing to a deal with the Angels. And then also it's Mailbag Palooza, answering your questions on Blake Snell, Jackson Merrill losing out on Rookie of the Year, Marvel DC questions, all sorts of stuff on this episode. So let's get to it.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Padres podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for Monday, November 25th. As always, I'm your host with sometimes, occasionally, but certainly not always the most, Javier Reyes. You can follow me on Twitter /X and also Blue Sky at Javipeno, Javiipeno. Also check out the show account on Twitter at LO_Padres for updates on the show, and feel free to keep sending me questions on all of these handles because we're going to be answering a bunch of them today. But I must first start off and say, with this podcast, first of all, we are brought to you by the always impeccable FanDuel. We love them very much. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. First of all, I just want to say for this podcast, maybe you can tell already, I am once again, and it's driving me insane, and I am so sorry to you guys. I'm getting sick again. I don't know why this keeps happening, that I go out once to the store every 2 weeks or whatever and I get sick. I'm trying to figure it out. I'm sorry. So I apologize for that. So you might get a lot of cuts, especially for my video listeners. You might get a lot of cuffs because I am coughing, and I'm a little nasally, but I'm coughing like crazy right now. So if you get a lot of coughs, my apologies if that's really distracting. I'm trying to get better. But for today's episode, guys, we're going to be talking a lot of mailbag questions. And I think that's going to be really key over the next few weeks. That's why the intro I mentioned there's a Marvel DC question, because frankly, we don't have too much to talk about, because this is how baseball off seasons go, for better or worse when it comes to the game. In my opinion, it's for the worse, because I think that one thing that's always fun about the other two major sports is when free agency opens, it actually opens, and it's like, oh cool, this is great. I saw the best right tackle get signed in 2 days, and NBA, oh, Kevin Durant signed with the Warriors or the Nets. It's much more exciting. But in these things, and this is for a bunch of reasons, whether it be ownership being cheap, whether it be Scott Boras being really annoying to negotiate with, granted that's his job, a bunch of these reasons why it might take until February before Juan Soto signs, but alas, that's where we're at. But that doesn't mean we don't have nothing to talk about, folks. I'm just saying, keep those mailbag questions coming in. It makes it a little bit easier for Mailbag Monday. The first thing I want to talk about, and there really hasn't been much Padres news, the only thing that's of news is something we're going to get into later, and that's Jackson Merrill losing out on Rookie of the Year. Dennis Lynn actually wrote a really great article detailing why it was unfortunate that he lost and maybe why he should have won. I recommend that. We're going to talk about that in a second. But first of all, Yusei Kikuchi agreed to a deal this morning with the Angels. 3 years, $63 million. Now, this might not seem like it's Padres related, and for the most part it isn't. First of all, I just want to say that the Angels are hilarious. It's the Angels are the Rockies of the American League. And what I mean by that is there just seems to be literally no direction in anything they do. This is a team that, and the Angels I mean now, this is a team that basically has shown that myself and others were right, that they should have traded Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout 3 years ago, and they would have absolutely kickstarted a really great rebuild if they did that. But in my opinion, I think that there's a selfishness and greed from the owner where they don't want to invest enough to make the team better, but they do want to have the star power that actually will make people pay attention to their games, especially in the case of Shohei, who they didn't trade, and for no reason, right? I don't know if you guys remember when they made that trade for Lucas Giolito at the deadline, and he was terrible, and they gave up really good prospects, and their team was even worse after that. So yeah, this is what happens when you have bad ownership. So again, Padres fans, whenever it looks bad, just be thankful that it's now. We're gonna see this offseason, right, with the new ownership group and what have you. But just be thankful that this is a team that's clearly gonna at least try somewhat. So that's good. But anyway, Yusei Kikuchi is a player that. So I have two reactions to this, and they're both related to the Padres. I think that the Padres, they clearly need to get a starter this offseason, right? And Kikuchi was definitely one of those players that could have done that. And he was really good last year. Like, he was a really, really solid player. And actually his peripherals suggest that he actually got a little bit unlucky. Yes, he had a 4.05 ERA, but 3.75 expected, FIP of 3.46, xFIP of 3.2. He's actually been really, really solid these last 2 years. He's a little bit old, a little bit, but 33 isn't like detrimental to me wanting to sign a guy, especially on a 3-year deal. I think the Angels are dumb because they should be rebuilding, and I don't understand their direction. But in a vacuum, I don't think that's actually a bad deal for Kikuchi, especially because low key, really good strikeout pitcher, 28% K rate this year with only a 6% walk rate, and last year 25.9% K rate with only 6.9% walk rate. Year before that, 27% strikeout rate, and he's gotten better with limiting the walks. I think that that's the biggest thing. His walk to strikeout ratio has gone down basically every year for a while now. It was 14.5%, now it's 19% last year, then 22% this year. So you could make the argument that maybe he's pitching above his head, but I think Kikuchi was a potential option for the Padres, considering that they need a starter and considering that we don't know exactly how many funds they have available to them to go out and get a big starter. Like, I really do think that Kikuchi could have been an option, because just a 3-year deal like that, especially with so much of the things we've talked about in the show with salaries that are going to get bigger with Tatis and Machado especially, and the fact that, you know, they want to potentially extend Jackson Merrill, and then they've got, you know, other deals like Musgrove and Cronenworth and Darvish that, like, you know, a smaller deal like this would be pretty great, I think, for the Padres. But I am wondering if him signing with the Angels is a sign that we don't want him, because what do we know about the Angels? They make all the worst signings, right? They signed Rendon to like a 16-year deal, whatever the heck it was. Guy never plays, and he's a mess in more ways than one, right? Josh Hamilton, Albert Pujols, all these guys. Justin Upton, that's one that was a little bit of a miss on their part. But I will say, this was, in my opinion, like, when you look at some of the top options available, he was definitely one of the ones that that sparked interest, because you know that he's not going to go for as much as Blake Snell, for Corbin Burns, Max Fried, guys like that. But it also makes me wonder, is the reason that there's two things that another couple things that I want to say. First of all, this is just a reminder that the MLB rumor mill doesn't always mean anything. And what I mean by that is, we basically got no rumors about Kikuchi, and then it just happened. So keep that in mind, that you're going to get a lot of reports. I know I just saw one, I think this morning, that said the Mets are currently the favorites, according to executives, to sign Juan Soto. I just think that we've seen in baseball that the rumor mill just isn't, it's only effective, in my opinion, like 100% certainty, when you're just wondering if someone's kind of like, if teams are actually just talking and like maybe someone's on the table. But even then, because again, you heard nothing about Kikuchi. Nothing. There was no rumors, and all of a sudden he signs. Meanwhile, you're hearing all the rumors about Snell, about Soto, about Roki. Like, there's so many there. And what's going to happen is that Roki Suzaki is going to sign with the Cubs. And it's going to be like, see, like, these things change so quickly, and it's just a harder, like, ecosystem to break through when it comes to reporting on it. I mean, Padres fans, right? Like, they know firsthand the infamous Max Scherzer close to a deal, right? That doesn't mean that they're all wrong and that it's all BS, because, for example, Juan Soto was rumored to the Padres and it ended up happening, right? But I would just keep that in mind, that things are going to happen very weirdly when it comes to the course of the offseason. So, all in all, hopefully, though, my last point, maybe Kikuchi signing so quickly with another team shows that the Padres have some confidence in getting one of the top-tier players, whether that be Roki, because of how much he's going to help them when it comes to payroll flexibility, or it be a Snell or Fried or something like that, in the sense that, wow, maybe they are going to actually spend a lot this offseason. It really was just about resetting the luxury tax. We'll have to see. So you can look at this in a bunch of different ways, whether it's like, man, he would have been the ideal, or man, he's going to be bad because he's an Angel, or man, this is a sign that we're aiming for someone big and we're not going for cheap options. So we'll just have to see. But yeah, Yusei Kikuchi. It's a shame that he's going to be a waste on the Angels, though. But guys, before we get into the mailbag and talk about some of these things, as I try to finish this episode on my flu game, I guess this is, I got to take a second to talk to you about one of our sponsors, and it is a new sponsor. It is the good folks over at Omaha. That's right. You might be familiar with that call when it came to Peyton Manning when he was playing football. He loved shouting Omaha. But we're talking about Omaha Steaks, guys. Nothing delivers comfort and joy quite like the unrivaled quality and taste of Omaha Steaks. This year, skip the holiday hustle and bustle and save 50% off site-wide during their cyber sale at Omaha Steaks. PrizePicks.com. Plus, get a $30 reward card when you shop early and score an extra $30 off with promo code MLB. With 5 generations of experience, Omaha Steaks consistently delivers the world's best steak experience. And their gifting experts have made it easy to deliver the perfect gift with thoughtfully curated gift packages starting at $89.99. Legendary steaks to mouthwatering desserts and more. Save 50% off site-wide during the Cyber Sale at omahasteaks.com. So get on that really quickly because it's going to be, this is a big week for everybody, I think. So listeners, they also get an extra $30 off with promo code MLB and a $30 reward card when you shop early. 50% off at Omaha, OMAHA steaks.com, and an extra $30 off with promo code MLB. Minimum purchase may apply. Go check it out. And just like that, everybody, we are back on Locked On Padres. Not necessarily thriving, but we're certainly vibing. You know what I mean? In segment number 2 of this podcast, guys. And we're going to start getting into the mailbag already because we got a lot of questions this week. But more importantly, we got some comments and questions on topics that I think are worthy of talking about for a long time, right? So firstly, it's about Jackson Merrill. The first thing I want to say is everyone go check out Dennis Lin's article over at The Athletic, where basically he talks about how, the rookie accomplishments, it's a shame that he wasn't rewarded. Reading from the article, had Merrill won the award, the Padres would have received an additional 2025 MLB draft pick after the first round through Major League Baseball's Prospect Promotion Incentive, PPI. Instead, Paul Skeens was announced as the winner after pitching as well as anyone in the majors from the time he debuted in May. And instead, the Padres will get no draft-related compensation after promoting Merrill on opening day and watching the shortstop turned center fielder flourish for 6 full months. He goes on to explain, look, this is a guy who, he turned 21 and he led the team in WAR. He was basically the team's overall best player and helped them resurge, right, after such a down 2023, things that voters seem to not take into account. I think that for me, before we get into some of your guys' reactions, I think that I was a little bit surprised by how not close it was. And it's funny because I said this with Aram on, was it Thursday or Friday's podcast? I think it was Friday's podcast. So everybody go check that out. We talked about Roki Suzaki. I said it as a joke, but I think I'm only 20% kidding when I say that you need someone if Jackson Merrill's dating Paige Beckers that he's more famous, does that affect the vote? Maybe. I don't know, frankly, because voters can be a little bit weird sometimes. But to me, my personal opinion is that I think Rookie of the Year is a reward that shouldn't be predicated on team success necessarily. I think that it really should just be the excellence of the individual because, I just feel like oftentimes the rookies are on the teams that aren't necessarily going to be amazing anyway, right? That maybe I'm dead wrong on that, but that's just me. I think that in general, there's been a little bit of a vibe that have the Padres been getting robbed? Jake Cronenworth could have won Rookie of the Year. He lost to Devin Williams. Manny Machado could have won MVP. Then you have Merrill. In my opinion, the only one that's a robbery, and I've talked about this before, was Machado. I don't understand how he literally led the National League in WAR. I'm pretty sure, I'm pretty sure he led the National League in WAR. Okay, looking back, he didn't lead. He was 0.1 behind Nolan Arenado that year, but the winner was Paul Goldschmidt, and I just I don't understand how Machado heading into that season clearly needed to be the alpha because they didn't have Tatis. I don't understand how the WAR discrepancy is that close and the 2 other nominees are teammates. So why is one of them the MVP? You literally had another one on there. Just made no sense to me. Machado was obscenely clutch that year. They don't go anywhere without him that year, and they maybe don't even make this trade for Soto. So I thought that one actually was a robbery. When it comes to this, I just think that when I start seeing things like best ERA for a pitcher since 1913, 25 years or younger, or whatever it was, I just think that it's fine if Skeens won. And some of you do agree. And we're going to talk about some of those responses right. Again, guys, I'm sorry about my health and whatnot. I'm sorry. So first of all, we did get some that said, he was robbed. Rama Murdy 9938 says Jackson Merrill was robbed of NL Rookie of the Year. I think this was due to Baseball Writers of America voters having a West Coast bias and don't watch Padres games since most of them are on the East Coast. Jackson deserved better. Skeens only played in 23 games. It's totally fair. Like, it really is. And I saw some people making jokes where it was like the MVP voting came out and Jackson Merrill was ninth in voting and then Paul Skeens was 19th. Now, my response to that would be is that in general, position players are always going to be higher. So it's like you might have to take that out of the equation because that's a little bit unfair that just because they're playing a different position that they can't be rewarded. And I think that's what these type of awards, your Cy Young's, Rookie of the Year, that might be what it's for. But I do get it because it does emphasize how much more important Jackson Merrill was to a team that was actually relevant in the grand scheme of baseball this year. So I do understand that point. And someone also echoes the same sort of sentiment. At MovieFanZ89 says, I know it's an award that's for a single player and not a team award, so maybe Merrill is not as upset, but I do think he was robbed. Skeens did not even start the season and only pitched in 23 games and 23 first place votes out of 30? Merrill was out there every game in a position that was brand new to him and he excelled. I just think the reason that they went so far for Skeens is because they also nominated him for Cy Young, and everybody knew he was not going to win that, so by default, he ran away with Rookie of the Year. I kind of like that. I think that it reminds me a little bit of like how the Oscars, like there's so many years where one movie's clearly the best, but it's not going to win because a bunch of reasons. Oh, it's a war movie. It's a biopic on some famous leader or whatever. So that's got to win Best Picture, right? That's more important. That's serious. So usually they end up giving like Best Director to what actually is the best movie of the year. Maybe that's what happened here, right? Like one of those sort of situations. Well, it's not 1-1. Sorry guys, I'm sick, leave me alone. But you get my point. Like the kind of, they're not going to win blank, so you give them this sort of sentiment is what I'm getting at. And I absolutely understand that. But then lastly, we had someone else say, at Brandon Evans 1306, I don't think Merrill was robbed. Skeens was putting up historic numbers. I do think Merrill deserved more first place votes though. Also, Merrill won the players voting, which means more to me. Totally feel that. It's a tight race, but I think that Dennis Lin, again, go check out that article. I just think he made a great point where it's kind of a really unfortunate like precedent to set that like we talk all the time about how, there's all this like incentivization to not call up players, to be cheap, to go to arbitration, blah, 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 that it's kind of in the owners and the team's favor a lot of times. And it is unfortunate that like the Pirates are rewarded for calling up their player later than they should have so they could get that service time, I'm pretty sure. Like you have all of that and they get rewarded for that in a way that feels, I think Skeens actually gets like another year of control. I forgot what it is exactly. Meanwhile, the Padres were like bullish and not service time manipulating and they don't get rewarded for that. And it literally helped them make the playoffs and be so great. So look, my opinion is that I have no beef with either winner of this award. I think it's phenomenally close. I really do. But I agree with my man right here. I think it should have been closer. Like, really only 7 first place votes? That to me was very weird, and it was very, like, maybe a little bit of the East Coast bias thing. I know that's, like, a common thing that people bring up. But to me, I was like, really? Like, did you guys not watch the sport this year? Because if Paul Skeens doesn't play for the Pirates this year, it does not impact anything in terms of the grander picture of baseball. I think that matters sometimes. But again, I think that matters more for MVP. So again, I'm going back and forth, and I think as evidenced by, and these are only just a few comments, as evidenced by the comments that I've gotten from some of you guys and that I've seen online and seen from other reporters, it tells me that maybe this was, no one's going to be happy either way. Like this was clearly a very heated race. The fact that I've seen even Padres fans say like, hey, I get it, Skeens was amazing. So who knows? Another comment, though, moving on to another topic from my man Rama Murdy, is Santander is an expensive option for us. Would prefer a cheaper player like Mark Canha if Profar doesn't resign. Mark Canha, I think, might be a little bit washed at this point. I mean, he's fine, right? But I would rather go the Tyler O'Neill route if you want to get like a little bit spicy, because Tyler O'Neill, while he is scary, has shown that this is a guy who could hit probably like 25 home runs, play great defense, strike out a lot, but get on base at a decent clip because of his walk rate. And also, like I said, play good defense. I think that there's like upside there. I would much rather spend money on Tyler O'Neill because I think that he's not going to cost nearly as much as Santander. And as evidenced in my episode we did last week, I just think he's a total trap. And I'm also going to be writing more about that for Just Baseball, so look forward to that. But of course, y'all, that's not it. We've got more topics to discuss, a few more questions to answer that you guys sent in that will be a blast and will make you smile because they made me smile. We're going to talk about that in just a second, guys. But first, I got to shout out one of our sponsors, and that is the good folks over at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. So, let me tell you, man, and the FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com and join today and get started with the $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And just like that, we're in the final segment of this episode. Guys, let's continue answering some of your questions. And we got one in terms of jerks and Profar. Not a criticism, but my man Tony Sue, he said, why is Profar criticized at all? Remember all the hit by pitches in the final weeks of the season? When he was hitting less, he was still getting on base at a high rate, and consistently every game, not a couple games a week. In fact, I'm pretty sure he was ranked number 14 in all of MLB in on-base percentage at the end of the season to go along with Arias number 4. It's great to have two players in your lineup that can get on base that often, and I just lament they never batted 1 and 2 after Tatis came back and reclaimed his number 2 spot in the order. Tatis great and has a great OPS, but his on base is far below Arias and Profar. I think that part of that was a couple things that I have to say is Profar, just looked it up, was number 7 in on base percentage this year. I get it. I think that this still is like a thing where, you know, it worked though. You know what I'm saying? Like the lineup order worked this year. I do get what you're saying though. The idea of those two at the top of the order is pretty sick. I will say that Arias grounded into more double plays this year than I would have liked. It was really frustrating. But overall, I don't hate it. But I just think that this lineup was so good this year that I can't really critique too much. And I understand them sometimes batting Tatis higher in the order because get more fastballs. Getting that guy on base is a nightmare, especially on the base paths. But overall, it's hard for me to complain when it clearly worked. You know what I'm saying? But I do understand your point though overall about Profar, and I agree. I said this on Twitter like a couple weeks ago. Like his weight on base, his expected weight on base was great. He made actual changes to his swing, right? Like he has more of a leg kick. His stance is like not it's much wider. Like there are actual things that he changed in his plate approach that we're going to talk about when we do the Profar player and review in more detail. And then also in the second half, yeah, still in 795 OPS, like he was still at least walking. And that's always been a trait that he's always shared. So to me, I kind of agree with you, man. I think that the Profar thing is, like, I know it's out of nowhere. And I think that's the one thing, is that numbers, eye test, all that. No, I don't see anything that jumps out for why he could regress. But in terms of the general, I've never seen a player who for 10 years was just or nearly out of the league figure it out this late. It's pretty unprecedented. Like, I know that we've seen players like this do well. We've seen JD Martinez when he finally got a chance, but that was different. That was more of just a question of playing time. Jose Bautista, great example, right? Like he got better a lot later. R.A. Dickey, players like that. There's really not a lot of comparisons though outside of that. And if there are, it's probably players that I don't, that weren't from my time necessarily. Earliest I could think of Bernie Williams a little bit. He wasn't amazing immediately, but even that was just like 3 years. So I don't know. In general, that's kind of my vibe. I agree, Sir Tony Sue. I think that he has been getting a little bit too much, not flack, but I agree. I don't think that this was like some crazy fluke that he's destined to be bad. This isn't Adam Frazier. This is not Cody Bellinger. It's Jackson Merrill. I think it's different. And another comment we got, this time a little bit of a dumb one, but we're going to read it anyway because that's what we do on this show. At Chris Serta 9821 says, trust me when I say the reason why the media took a hold of it is because it's a fact. The Padres taunted the fans, acted like the big bad wolves. The Dodgers were getting lit by Tatis, so you pitch him inside, you hit him, it's baseball. That's funny. The Padres took it personal. The Dodgers displayed the best defense against them, winning and shutting them out and in essence up. First of all, I'm just going to respond to this and say, guys, it's been like a month and a half. I don't know why I'm still getting Dodger fans on my videos, but I think this idea that fans are like some innocent, like cherished little baby in a cradle, as if every game, no matter a fan base, Dodgers, Padres, Red Sox, Yankees, Patriots, whatever it is, they're always taunting and saying stuff to players at away games. Are you kidding me? Like, I just don't understand why the Dodger fans at least, are acting like this is some innocent, innocuous group, and Profar is not allowed to just do something back. So therefore, you're allowed to throw stuff and then throw beer at his teammate who had nothing to do with the incident. Anyway, I rest my case. But what can you expect from Dodger fans? They're weird. Next up, we got a little bit of a question on my guy, my boy. Well, not a question as much as just a comment. And there's been multiple comments, and I think that they have to do with one of the questions I got as well. At Nico P195, yeah, I don't see us making big signings, mainly trades and a couple of our own free agents. That's about it. And then at James Broush, Braush, says Padres will not be big spenders. Suzaki will be their biggest signing. They should trade for Vientos, first base, and Acuna, shortstop, from the Mets, and Wood, left field, and an infielder and or catcher from the Nationals. Who would go? Cease and King. They're both 1 year away for free agency, so you might as well fill gaps and think long term, saving lots of money at the same time. Then Pod should trade Cronenworth and Arise to the Yankees for Cortez and Stroman, who they'd quickly flip to the Jays to rid themselves, or Jays and question mark, to rid themselves of his contract, effectively ridding themselves of Cronenworth's back contract. This is up there for one of the most insane trade fantasy things I've ever seen. So you think that they can trade for Mark Vientos, who was one of the best players on the Mets last year, that they can just do that, right? Acuna, the shortstop from the Mets, okay. I mean, you could trade for Acuna probably, realistically, because they do have Lindor. And James Wood, who's one of the best prospects in baseball, they're just going to get him back? And an infielder and or catcher from the Nationals. And you're going to send away Cease and King, and then you're going to replace them with Stroman and Cortez. This is like fantasy baseball where like you just do trades to do trades. And again, there's no way you're getting Vientos. There's no way you're getting Wood. This is insane. But you know what? I read all the comments. And I did like that you said Suzaki will be the biggest signing. I think if they get Roki Suzaki and then just like either re-sign Profar or bring in Jock Peterson or maybe Tyler O'Neill, I think that's all they need to do. I think that'd be a huge, huge offseason. But again, what the heck do I know? But yeah, guys, that is one of the craziest things. But shout out to you, Mr. James Broush, for one of the most bold ideas of trading. Get rid of your 2-star pitchers for lesser pitchers and then somehow convince teams to trade their young, controllable superstar assets. If they pull it off, sir, I will buy you whatever you want. Just a nice little comment from my guy at Called Turned a Gundam. As a Rangers Padres 2-teamer since 2004, I love these collaborations. I get my chocolate and my peanut butter. Everybody go check out my crossover with Bryce Patrick from last week. It was a blast. Next question, though, has to do with free agency, and it's a very important one. This one coming from Mojave, at Mojave Madness on Twitter. What will it possibly take to bring back Snell, and if so, is it worth it? So I think there's two things here. It does depend on what exactly the budget we're working with is. Because again, if you pay Snell like 4 years, 120, which is like kind of the popular prediction from a lot of different sites, from the Athletics to Fangraphs to Spotrac, whatever it is, it's like $30 million a year. And again, the good thing about that would be that it's 4 years. That's the big thing for Snell, is I don't think that you have to give like a 6-year, 7-year deal to Blake Snell. That's the good news. And as much as I love him, I've said this before, I really think that he's my favorite pitcher in all of baseball for a variety of reasons. It's tough to say. I think that it wouldn't necessarily be awful, but I just feel like it really restricts them going forward. And I like Blake Snell, but I just like having a little bit more flexibility because, again, it needs to be emphasized that like the Tatis and Machado contracts are going to get more and more expensive, so that will limit them, and then not to mention they have other pitching concerns with the fact that you still have Cease and King who are gone after this year. So Padres have a lot to work with. That's why I think like Roki Suzaki is like literally the saving grace. He's not going to be perfect. I don't think he's going to be better than Blake Snell this next year necessarily. But the fact that he's only 23 and he's going to get better and you get him controllable for a long time, they desperately need that. That's why I always talk about how Jackson Merrill was an A+ this season, because they desperately need controllable players that can give them some flexibility to improve their team, whether it be to make them even better than they were last year or to make up for any regressions they have, right? Like, it's not impossible that Merrill gets a little bit worse this year, so maybe you want to have some other backups. I don't know what it is, that Jake Cronenworth, all these things. I just think that like, I really think that it's Suzaki, man. I really do. I think that that's like the dream thing. Or maybe you go a little bit bargain bin hunting, but this is why you have to be careful when you make these big deals. And this is why every offseason, when everyone yells at me about why don't you want to get the big, the best player, it's because you don't know who's going to become available. You don't know how everything's going to trespass. You like having flexibility. The Dodgers have a lot of big time players, don't get me wrong, but they've been good at not just spending only and getting these giant, 12-year deals. And also, even when they do have the bigger deals, they have deeper pockets than the Padres do overall. So they can afford that type of stuff. They can do Shohei, Freddie, Betts, all that sort of stuff, Yamamoto. They can do all four of those and it not impede their ability to improve the team afterwards. I don't know if the Padres can do that. So I'd love Snell. I'm going to be excited if they get him anyway. But with these contracts, especially the Darvish and Cronenworth contracts, and Bogarts being the biggest one, at least Darvish is still good. Like an above average starter, and especially, when you need him, he's always shown up for the team, but still makes me nervous, having those guys. If you could take back a move, it's easily Bogarts right now, because that dude's on an 11-year contract, guys. Like it's rough with the Bogarts thing right now. So they desperately need him to get better, or at least just become a solid player. You're not asking for much from him, but it's scary. It's very scary. So yeah, I really think that you need to go a little bit cheap on the pitching end. Maybe a trade or Suzaki or one of the like lower tier starting pitchers. Maybe you go out and get Patrick Sandoval. Maybe you go out and get, I believe the Rockies non-tendered Cal Quantrill. It's not terrible. Max Scherzer, if you just want to have an old veteran on your team, like just have okay players. Alex Cobb isn't too bad. I don't know. Severino, right? Like I think you need to do that because I just think that things are going to get a little bit tight for the Padres going forward. And then the last question is a little bit of a fun one that has nothing to do with baseball that I will answer quickly because it has nothing to do with baseball. But at Abdil on Twitter says, top 10 Marvel DC characters. Look, in my opinion, I'm not going to do all top 10 and break them down in full, but I think in general, the most important characters are Wolverine, Spider-Man, Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman. I think those are always the golden five, give or take a couple ones out there. My personal favorites are Magneto, Spider-Man, Peter Parker, Kitty Pryde, Rogue, and then it's hard to the last three would be Wolverine, whether it be Laura or Logan, or it be Miles Morales. Miles being an honorable mention because I think that Spider-Verse is like one of the best movies ever made, and I think that I want a few more stories though. Comics I like, but he hasn't quite had like the ultimate best comic story yet. Spider-Verse has been his ultimate, so he's just waiting for a little bit more from my boy, my Puerto Rican king, so hopefully not on him. And yeah, Kitty Pryde underrated. She's goated in the comic book. Shout out to her. But yeah, everybody, that about does it for today's edition of the Locked On Padres podcast, the only pod that may be better than the Padres themselves. Feel free to send me more questions as time goes along. I'm not going to lie, doing today's episode was a lot. I've had to pause this episode and restart like at least 60 times. So it's really hard for me. So I'm going to try and get better, but I no guarantee that I'll be able to record tomorrow. This is really, really hard for me. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I keep getting sick. I don't know why this keeps happening, but whenever we do another episode, we're going to talk about more free agents. We're going to talk about maybe Tyler O'Neill. We're going to talk more about Max Fried, all sorts of players, and then doing the Jerks and Profar player review. But for now, I'm really sorry, guys, but I don't know if I'm just healthy enough and I'm going to be up to doing see, there it comes again. If I'm going to be up to doing an episode for tomorrow. So stay tuned to the Twitter page and whatnot. And of course, follow me on my personal account at Javiipeno, JAVIIPENO, or at LO_Padres. You can also follow me on Blue Sky at the same handle. So go check that out, guys. But until next time, stay safe. And of course, stay faithful. My Friar Faithful homies. Take care.